In this mini module, let's sum up hacking and then start to talk about cyber attacks. This particular slide I'm going to spend a little bit of time on because I think it's one of the best slides I've ever seen that describes hacking and the types of hackers. And it comes from a report by Myers, Powers, and Faisal, who produced this report for the Lawrence Livermore National Lab in Livermore, California. And it's a report called The Taxonomies of Cyber Adversaries and Attacks. Now, this particular chart, what I really like about it, and I think you'll like it too, and that it would serve you well to be familiar with this, because what they do is they break down the different type of hackers into the type of hacker, the skills that are required for that hacker, the maliciousness of each hacker, the motivation, why these offenders are engaging in hacking, or they're not all offenders, obviously, and the methods that they tend to use. So this particular chart drives home that point, that hackers are not a monolithic group. Different types of hackers have different types of skills and hack for different reasons, engage in different levels of maliciousness, and engage in different types of behaviors. So let's spend a little bit of time just going through this chart. And again, I would encourage you to be familiar with it, because if you understand everything on this chart, you pretty much understand what we want you to understand about hacking for this particular class. As we've talked about before, script kiddies, they're also called newbies or novices. Skills are very low. They simply are using printed code books that others have and just following. It's almost like an IKEA event where you buy something from IKEA and you follow the book, the rules, and you put it together, this new desk or this new table or this new chair. That's what script kiddies do. And very limited skills, and is at the same time maliciousness, not meaning a lot of harm and not causing a lot of harm. They do it out of boredom and out of thrill-seeking. It's the boredom and thrill-seeking just to see what will happen if they code this particular code that they had come across. And the method they use is to download and run stuff that's already been written, these hacking scripts. They're known as toolkits. So the script kiddies get a hold of these toolkits. They have very limited skills, very low maliciousness, and motivation. Again, they're bored, seeking thrills. There's also the hacktivists and political activists. These also have very low skills, but while their skills are low, they actually do want to cause a little bit of harm. They want to send a message to whatever group they're targeting that they do not agree with that group's behaviors or that group's values, and so their point is to create some type of harm. And the motivation is to promote a political cause and to promote that political message. And they would engage in denial of service attacks or defacement of rival cause websites, and so their methods of engaging in hacking are a little bit different than you would find in your other types of hackers. Now, some of these types of hackers we didn't mention in our prior overview of hackers, but we can talk about how Myers categorizes them. Myers and colleagues talk about cyberpunks, crashers, and thugs. These cyberpunks, crashers, and thugs, according to Myers, have very low skills. They have moderate levels of maliciousness, and these individuals are engaging in hacking for prestige, for personal gain, and for thrill seeking. So they actually get a bit of excitement out of their hacking. And the reason they get the excitement out of it is they are writing their own scripts, they are engaging in malicious acts, and they're bragging about their exploits. They're making sure that people know that they're the ones that wrote the script, that they're the ones that caused this moderate level of harm, And you don't get prestige and you don't get personal gain unless people know that you did it. So the cyberpunks, crashers, and thugs might be somewhat analogous to our low-level gang members in traditional crimes, and that they're doing these things for personal gain, for prestige, and for thrill-seeking. Now, the insiders, they have moderate skills. They're probably working in a company that they know something about technology. Now, you don't actually need a lot of skill for an insider, but there are many times when the insider just goes somewhere in cyberspace they're not supposed to go. But to actually create a lot of harm, they probably have a moderate level of skill. Myers points out they can create a lot of harm. You know, an insider, we trust them with the company's network. We trust them. It would be similar to when we trust someone with our kids. Well, when you work somewhere, your company is trusting you with everything that they've given you access to. And as a result, if someone wants to harm that, the maliciousness level can be quite high. And they typically will do this for motivations related to they're disgruntled, or they want personal gain, or they want to get even. Sometimes research I've done finds that the insider is often the person that was just fired. And so within a week, 2 weeks, or a month, if their account isn't shut off, that's certainly a recipe for disaster. Even if their account is turned off, they may have a former colleague's access information, and that recently fired person does have the motivation of revenge, and they use those privileges to attack current or former employers, as well as the individuals within that employment arena. Coders and writers are another type of hacker or adversary class. These have high skills. These are the ones that know how to write code in order to have that code take off and do some damage. Now, the level of maliciousness, Myers says, is somewhat moderate. And the reasons that coders and writers engage in these behaviors are for power, prestige, revenge, and respect. They simply get pleasure, individual pleasure, in the forms of power, prestige, revenge, and respect out of engaging in that behavior. They write their scripts and automated tools, and they often may serve as a mentor for people who are just getting into coding and writing as a form of hacking. So a different type of hacker than our insiders, our cyberpunks, our hacktivists, and our script kiddies. There's also hackers, as we mentioned, and their motivation, their skills are high, but their maliciousness is high. They're low, very low. They don't want to hurt anything. They just want intellectual gain. They want to improve our knowledge. They do this for an ethical duty, and they want respect for their knowledge and their efforts to help to reduce the vulnerability. Now, white hat hackers are called old guard, and also in some you may hear them referred to as sneakers. They're sneaking in and showing what damage could be done. They don't want to do any damage. Their method is non-malicious hacking to help others and to test new programming. In contrast to black hat hackers or professional or elite hackers, they've got very high skills. Myers and colleagues say their skills are even higher than the white hat hackers. But they also have very high maliciousness. These are the people that want to hurt a computer system or hurt a business or hurt whoever they're targeting. They do it for personal gain, they do it for greed, and they engage in these behaviors for revenge of some sort in some cases. And these their methods are sophisticated attacks by criminals and thieves. They might have been hired They might sometimes involve organized crime, but they certainly are the ones, when you think of cybercrime or cyber criminals or cyber hackers, these are probably the ones that come to mind most often, even though they're just one of a variety of types of hackers. The reason they probably come to mind is because of that high level of skill and that high level of maliciousness they have. And these are the ones that you probably see in the movies more and see on television more. These and the white hat hackers, but again, they're just one type of hacker among these varieties. And then Myers and Powers and Faisal talk about the cyber terrorist. The cyber terrorist skills that they say very high. Maliciousness, they're not there to expose vulnerabilities. They're there to create damage. They're there to create harm. They're there to hurt someone or something. Their motivation is ideology, politics, and espionage. They're doing it for the good of their group and to help their group gain more power over another group. And in terms of their methods, they are typically state-sponsored, well-funded cyber attacks against enemy nations or governments. Now, key here is to recognize that these efforts are typically much better organized than other types of hacking efforts. For others, it may be individuals working alone, like with the insiders and the script kiddies. But for cyber terrorists, these are complex organizational offenses that involve planning, involve targeting specific governments, involve goal setting, and it involve almost as if we had our own organization and the business of this organization was to create harm against another organization. That is how we could envision cyber terrorism as an adversary class. As we look at these and think about these classes, it's important to come back to the point that as a criminologist, I look at these adversary classes through a criminological lens, and I think about their behavior almost sociologically. Someone from another discipline might look at these adversary classes from a completely different lens, and they might, rather than thinking about that, for example, an engineer, rather than thinking about the sociological dimensions, might think about how physical systems are used differently by these adversarial classes, whereas a philosopher might ask questions about the philosophical connections between the individual and society and the organization, and how those connections promote or limit behavior. A psychologist might look within the individual hacker and see what those motives are. What Myers, Powers, and Faisal have done here, though, is, in a sense, brought together different disciplines, and it probably wasn't an intentional thing where they thought we're going to create this interdisciplinary table, this interdisciplinary framework, or this interdisciplinary taxonomy, but by focusing on the method, the motivation, and the offense type of the adversary class, the result is that they have actually produced an interdisciplinary framework that can help you and I understand hacking through an interdisciplinary lens. So I probably said it too many times, but I really encourage you to be familiar with the connections between these different classes and their skills, maliciousness, motivation, and the methods. If you know this, you know what we need to know about hacking.